In that moment, I had like $500 in my account.
Marcus Bellringer Bell, award-winning music producer with over 1 billion streams.
So I started when I was 2 years old playing piano. I started writing songs when I was 8 years old. And then I started my first company when I was 12 years old.
Creator of AI music artist character Ravyn Lyte.
Who's the world's first North American AI character that's a recording artist doing pop music.
He worked with global icons like Nicki Minaj or Snoop Dogg.
I didn't really have so much of an understanding of gangsta rap until I started working with former gang members.
He combined expertise in music production and AI technology to define the future of music.
That's the lens that I operate from. How can I help an entrepreneur or a recording artist monetize their mission more quickly?
Hey Marcus, welcome to the Nomad Solopreneur Show.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too, and for those in the audience that are just tuning in, tell me 2 reasons why they should listen to us today.
Because when you put two human beings together that have a lot of exposure and experience in different parts of the world, a third thing emerges inside of conversations. That's one. Two, if you're interested in AI and looking for ways to optimize whether it's your life or your creativity or your ability to touch audiences, this would be an episode for you to really check out and maybe even take some notes on.
Now I'm even more excited to dive into it because you had such a fascinating life and career. And from working with the big names like Snoop Dogg, Nicki Minaj, or Kate Perry to starting an AI artist. How did you come up with the idea?
It started and emerged as a result of a situation that happened where I lost my voice. But before I dig into that, just for a little bit of context, I've been in the music industry my entire life. So I started when I was 2 years old playing piano. I started writing songs when I was 8 years old. So I was a bit of a child prodigy and a child prodigy musician. And then I started my first company when I was 12 years old. So I've been an entrepreneur as well as a music artist, creative for my entire life. And over the years, I've seen a lot of different changes in many industries, not just the music industry. But one of the things that I saw myself doing was looking for whatever the new technology was. And I didn't have a term for that back then, but I was a technologist and a futurist. And so I was always looking for, okay, well, how did they create that sound on that song? Oh, what was that instrument that they used? And then I try and get that instrument so I could create that same sound. Or when it became possible with like eMagic, which ended up becoming Logic, when that program came out and you were able to, and Pro Tools and all of that, I gravitated towards those innovations in recording. And then when AI started coming more commonplace and easily accessible for people, I've been involved in AI technology for about 15 years now. And so 10 years ago, one of the first music AI programs came out that allowed you to master a recording, and that's called Lander. And so that was about 10 years ago. And as soon the day that Lander came out, someone had messaged me, hey, there's some AI. I don't even think they use the word AI. They just said you could take the song and upload it, and it made it better, right? And it mastered it, and so I said, okay, well, that day I started using that program, and that was a program. So when the AI revolution happened, I'll call it revolution, that it happened last year, and just with all revolutions, there's always a build up to a revolution. And I would assert that with AI, since the 50s, there has been a build up to this moment in history. And when I look at what's possible inside of creativity, inside of business, inside of being able to monetize your passions and be able to reach and impact audiences, there's no time like now to be able to do that, which leads me to the creation of Ravyn Lyte. When I was generating images, and I generated probably 4,000 images of Ravyn Lyte, who's the world's first North American AI character that's a recording artist doing pop music. And that came out of me doing 100 songs last year in 100 days.
Wow.
And midstream, I lost my voice.
Damn.
And when I lost my voice in the middle of that challenge, because I do these 100-day challenges, and I said, "Oh my gosh, there must be an AI that I can clone my voice and keep going." And so I started looking for AI voice models and found some that could do my speaking voice and then later my singing voice. Well, out of that discovery, I saw, well, wait a minute, if I can clone my voice there, and around that time, I think Kanye West and Drake had songs come out that were not them, but AI avatars. And I was like searching for where can I find that voice model, right? So I could do something similar for my voice, not taking somebody else's voice. But then I said, well, wait a minute, I could use my voice and sing like a woman if I wanted, or sing like a kid if I wanted, right? And so I started experimenting with that. And when I looked at what could happen with audio, when I looked at what could happen with pictures and images, and the more realistic these AI generative images are, like Mid Journey and Flux that just came out, you can't really tell the difference between a Flux generated image and a real person with their with their iPhones or whatever phone that they're using. When I saw that and then saw what was happening with the video aspect as well, because started doing music videos with I said, well, wait a minute. Those are pretty much all the elements needed for an artist. And so I started working on developing the Raven Light character out of that.
Man, that's quite a fascinating process, and especially because there are so many elements involved, from you losing your voice from that challenge to playing with this technology for more than a decade. And that's something probably those listening are not aware of, that AI was around for so long. Yes, it just got popular, like you mentioned, with the revolution last year. But AI was around is for over a century, if not more than that. And when it comes to putting all these pieces together, and you mentioned that you have almost all the elements, or pretty much all the elements of an artist, I will challenge that to say that it's missing one piece, that human connection that audience has with an artist when they are on a stage in a concert. How did you want to bridge that gap? Will it be probably even possible, or
Well, there are other examples in the marketplace of characters that have incredible connection with the human beings in that character. Think about Mickey Mouse. I have a friend of mine that is, I mean, she loves Disney stuff, right? Disney princesses, all the, I mean, she has like the yearly membership to be able to go to Disneyland and Disney World and all of that, right? She has an affinity for those characters. And many people around the world have affinities for things like the Disney princesses, for example, right? Basically, when you think about how we as human beings, and I'm someone that like studies, you know, neuroscience and psychology and philosophy, and I'm very heavy into expanding my specialized knowledge and digging into different fields and integrating that into what it is that I do, because there are people that are expert that have thought about things longer than I have. Right? So it is useful to study those that have spent a lot of time in a domain, right? And from what I've seen and read and have even, spent a lot of time thinking about is we as human beings have this ability to make connections with objects, right? And and whether that's a living thing like a dog or a cat, right? We can look at a dog or cat and say, "Oh, yeah, the cat's sad." Do we know that the cat is sad? The cat is catting. It's us making meaning with that animal, right? Same thing, making meaning. If you look at, like, I'm wearing an aura ring right now, right? So to measure my sleep, to measure, my activity throughout the day and things like that. Well, this is just a piece of, equipment around my finger until there's meaning connected to it,
Correct.
until there's technology that helps create meaning around it. So if I see that, I get a signal that says, hey, you may want to consider standing up now, right? I can make that mean, well, if I stand up, I'm going to be healthier. Or I can make that mean, well, I don't feel like it or whatever, right? And it's the same thing when it comes to whether it's AI avatars or AI characters, or whether it is, a crystal that someone picked up, or a seashell, or a four-leaf clover, right? We have this capacity to bring meaning to it. And so the meaning that has been brought to the AI artist Ravyn Lyte is, what's the reason for her existence, right? What's her meaning as a character is she's a stand for mental health and wellness. She's a stand for bringing positive energy and good vibes into the world. And with the team that's supporting this project, we're very clear that this is not just a music project. This is a project that supports humanity on so many different levels.
And how do you plan to mix those together? Because at first glance seems two very different things. How can your character help other people well-being?
One of the things that we've done with the Ravyn Lyte music, so the Just Be the One song, there's her first single is called 11111, Just Be the One. And that song was written in collaboration with Sean Myers, who's had hits with Selena Gomez and Demi Lovato, etc. And so we were aiming to make sure that every single aspect of that song's creation would be a creation that would help people. And so I've spent some time with some neuroscientists. My first exposure was this neuroscientist named Garnett, who's created a bunch of technology to help rewire the brain. And he came by the studio and spent a lot of time explaining to me the impacts of sound and frequencies on the brain and our mental health and our sleep and all of these things. And since that time together with him, that opened up a whole other world. I have a few friends that are neuroscientists, now some neurosurgeons, as well as technologists that are in the space of rewiring the brain and so forth. And so what I've done is I've taken what I've learned from many of these experts in the area of what sound does to the mind, what it does to the brain, what it does for our health, and infuse that inside of the pop music that Ravyn Lyte does. And so the more someone listens to Just Be the One, the better they feel. The way the song is designed is in a way that is the opportunity, I would assert, for pop music in general. Because a lot of times creatives aren't conscious of what they put inside of their creations. But everything that is you ends up into the music. Just like everything that is you ends up in your business if you're an entrepreneur. So there's not a separation between you and something that you create. The consciousness that you are creating something with infuses consciousness in that thing. So if you are, for example, in the business world, if you're creating a company that is not caring about people, but caring more about profits, then that consciousness is inside of the business. The way it interacts with customers, the way it interacts with its employees, the way, right, all of that consciousness lives inside of whatever that business design is. Like it's a systems design. And just like you can design a product to help people, or you can design your product to be about profits. Like I was just in a conversation yesterday about insurance companies, and there's some insurance companies that have designed a product so that they don't have to pay out for insurance, right? That's not really helpful for humans being that are customers and their health, right? If you're worried about, how am I going to pay for, this treatment or whatever, or something happens and you're expecting an insurance company to come through, right? The way that system is designed is not necessarily always in favor of that person being able to get the help that they need. And so the same thing applies here in the music industry as far as and from my view, is that if you are creating products and music and experiences that are helpful for people, then that is just going to help not just grow and expand the reach, but the impact that what it is that you create can have on people.
Yes, absolutely. And this wants me to go on a more controversial thing, types of music, because pop music, or let's say classic music, or other music that sounds that you listen has a positive impact, it's one thing. But for example, you work with artists like Snoop Dogg, that we know that some of his songs are, let's say, less positive, and other, I don't know, in that industry of rap, or let's say heavy metal, or maybe you can help me with other type of music that doesn't have that positive impact. How much true is in that, and how much that type of music can influence people in a positive or negative way?
Well, I would challenge your assertion about impact, positive impact, because there are many different ways to have impact, not just through a song, but through the communication of a song, for example. Because if you look at and this is a good question. I love engaging in conversations like this because I came initially from the classical world, right? So when I was two, my first genre was classical, and then jazz. So I was about to quit music because in classical, at least at the level that I was at, there wasn't room for creative expression. Like I always wanted to add something to Mozart, or I wanted to add like, oh, Beethoven should go here, right? And the teachers would say, no, stick to the what's written, Marcus, right? And my mother, who she was a tennis prodigy. Actually, she played in the U.S. Open
Oh, nice.
back in the '60s, and she used to tour the country with Arthur Ashe and so forth. So she recognized, that I was a prodigy. I didn't have that language. I didn't discover I was a child prodigy until I saw it in a newspaper article and it said child prodigy something whatever. And I was like, "What's that?" "Oh, that's what I was. Okay." So, anyway, so she saw that I was losing interest because I wanted to like do pop music and I wanted to do other things. And so she had reached out to a professional jazz musician, jazz pianist, and asked him if he would train me. And that opened up the door for a whole world of creation. And so that one move and finding that teacher that exposed me to the freedom that I could have in being able to play music set the course of my life, right? So I became a jazz musician. And then at the same time, I was being able to develop my ear and play things that I was hearing on the radio and songs that I was interested in. And what I realized was that songs carry a lot of ingredients. They carry emotions, they carry messages, they carry frequencies, they carry intentions. And so when I started developing my abilities as a music producer, I started playing around in a lot of different genres. So I've created heavy metal music, I've created rock music. I've had, one of my first hits was a rock song, for example, right? And so I started playing in these different areas and I actually learned about hip hop. I thought I was producing hip hop until I started working with Jam Master Jay from Run DMC. He had heard some music that I had created and invited me to New York to work with him. And that's when I really learned how to produce hip hop music. And I started understanding more about hip hop culture because I didn't really have so much of an understanding of like gangster rap until I started working with former gang members. And there was a organization in Boston called Gang Peace that I worked with and showed them how to express their emotions using music. And so we created a bunch of rap songs, right, at Gang Peace because it was actually healing for them to be able to express themselves and whatever traumas and situations that they encountered through the tool that music is for creatives. And then what happens is there are communities and populations that resonate with what that artist is expressing. And so what happens is inside of that resonance, and this is the power of music. There's not very many things in the world that exist that can do this. Inside of that resonance, a person can feel gotten, understood. Like, oh my gosh, what he's saying is what I have experienced. And the person can feel, and I felt this way with music, where something was expressed that's like, oh my gosh, that artist or that writer is speaking my soul right now. And you've probably experienced that too. And as a human being, we experience a wide range of emotions, do we not?
Exactly. A lot of them.
Right. And so different music genres can capture those emotions, can capture anger, can capture heartbreak, can capture, you know, affirmative language as well as language that's just meant to be creative expression. So I would challenge that music is like negative or positive. There's some music, for example, that you and I would listen to, and it would just be noise to us, like literally sound like noise. And it helps kids with autism. And you would say, well, wait a minute, how is that possible? Because of the way the brain works and the way we as human beings are so different. And when you hear people say that music saved my life, Sometimes that's because they resonated with something that was expressed that was what they were going through, and it helped them get through that.
Yes, and on that note, I'm a big listener of Armin van Buren, and
Mhm.
has this in State of Trance has the server for Dreamers part when he invites guests that share a favorite song, and probably 80% of them has a touching story attached to that song that somehow, in a positive way, impacted their lives. And I definitely can see all the benefits of this. And I had just one thing for you, one another objection to overcome: the lyrics side of things. So let's say,
Mm.
of course, can trigger some positive feelings in someone, but in the same time, it's also possible to trigger something negative. Like,
Absolutely.
and at the end of the day, we are in control. We act in certain ways, and in the same time we are influenced by others. So I want to ask you,
Mm.
how important are artists in the way they transmit that message without having any negative impact to their listeners?
Listen, the power of music is undeniable. There are artists that speak messages about social situations. That there was an artist, I can't remember the name of the artist right now, that just got arrested last week. Got arrested because of his song, right? Talking about issues, right? Issues of injustice. And so when we talk about the power of lyrics and music as a transmission device, it's like books, right? I mean, there's a reason why, and sometimes in genocides, or when there's social unrest in around the world over, periods of time, they will burn the books, right? Because books can be a transmission device. That's why I love writing so much. I love, right? I've written, over 100 books with the help of AI, and then I've written a best-selling book without AI's help, you know, from years ago. But these are communication devices. The words that we speak are communication devices. And they could be used for good, and they could be used for things that aren't helpful. And then but you don't really know whether something was helpful or not until you get further enough in the future to look back and see whether that was helpful or not. For example, if you look at what happened in the civil rights movement here in the US, right? And the violence that happened against African Americans, and my mother was a part of the civil rights movement. She was an activist, and when they had sit-ins and that was shown on television, right? That violence was shown on television. What that did was created empathy. The showing of the violence created empathy that helped the civil rights movement, that helped that community. And so to say whether something is good or bad is left to the future. And so when I look back at how hip hop has brought light on issues that happen in underrepresented communities, I can't look back and say that the gangster rap or the, was all the way bad. Yeah, there were some negative consequences, right? But then there were also positive consequences that have helped bring light to injustice.
I really love the way you picture this, because that's indeed the reality. At the end of the day, any single thing out there is not just black and white. You have the nuance that you can see, as you mentioned, either in the future or in a near future, how that event or that song or that artist had an impact on people. And that's why most of us, we need to educate ourselves to learn more about not only the history, but how, for example, in your case, music can influence others. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, I truly believe that it's a positive impact in almost every action that we do on a daily basis. Of course, if we are not, I won't name some politicians in different countries, that even them, I will say, for their purpose, the impact they have, it's still positive in their view or probably in their followers' views. And
Oh, I want to point something out real quick.
please,
Did you know when jazz music came out, it was controversial?
I had no idea, no.
Yeah. So jazz music, oh my gosh, the pushback on jazz music was substantial, right? That, this is like the devil's music, jazz music, blues, right? Right now, what we look at as positive music, like, oh, these jazz songs in its day was like hip hop. Like when hip hop came, no, this is pushing up against, the social norms. And so, again, even in classical music, right, there were certain movements in classical music that were controversial. So, you pointing to like really, digging into history and looking at, what happens over the past. And this is part of the role of a futurist is being able to look back and see what's happened over time, right? And look at the trends. And there are things that you can pretty much see happen. There are 7-year trends, there are 20-year trends, there are 5-year trends, there are seasons for things, there are seasons of activities. So whether you have a business that that goes through cycles, and if you're in business long enough, you start to see cycles. Oh, people purchase more around this period of time in certain industries, or people are on holidays, so if you see a decrease in your revenue, that is not you or your product, that's just a cycle. Right, these types of things, these first principles, okay, of cycles and trends and history, and how you can use history to leverage the now and the future, right, is part of kind of our toolbox. And I really help support entrepreneurs, not just recording artists and musicians and so forth, but I really care deeply about entrepreneurs having tools to be able to ride those kinds of waves. And music is a great metaphor for what happens in whatever business or what happens in society as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, exactly like the example that you mentioned with jazz and classical music, not later than last year when AI revolution started, most people had a pushback like, I'm going to lose my job, AI will replace me, and so on. They didn't look at the bright side of things and how we can leverage technology to actually have more time, more creative expression, rather than just focusing on the nitty gritty of the daily tasks that you have. We can use
Mm.
technology to make more free time for things that are actually moving the needle in the right direction rather than being stuck into execution mode or stuff like that.
The whole thing about that, I'm glad you're pointing to that, because so I started last year inside of the AI revolution to look at how the tools could actually help support my company. So I have an education company and I have the music company, and the music company supports over 600 recording artists, music producers with their music getting placed in TV and film. And then my education company supports entrepreneurs and people that want to make a difference in the world and uplift humanity with tools like AI to have their dreams happen more quickly, have their messages happen out into the world with more power and the monetization of missions and things like that. And so people in those programs like the Wealth and Impact Boot Camp is one of those, you know, seeing those people use the AI tools that I've shared with them, and they've launched courses or launched businesses or started building communities or all of a sudden started getting active on social media or launched podcasts like this one, right? To see what people have been able to do with the AI tools. See, because it's not the tools, it's who's using the tool, right?
True.
So it's the responsible and ethical use of AI to make the world better. That's the lens that I operate from. Right? And so how can I help an entrepreneur or a recording artist monetize their mission more quickly, right? With AI tools. How can I help an entrepreneur or a creative get to more people and reach larger audiences? So Ravyn Lyte is kind of a demonstration of that, because one of the things that we've done with Ravyn is, her backstory is she's from Spain, right? So we've done some television interviews with Ravyn where she's speaking in Spanish. There's a Spanish version of the Just Be the One song that will be released, soon. And so now it's not just Ravyn being able to reach an English speaking audience, but it's also being able to reach a Spanish speaking audience. And the same thing happens in businesses. The opportunity to reach other audiences with your offers of value, I mean, it just gets me so excited just talking about it. I don't know if you can feel my energy, but it gets me excited as a creator and someone that uses the tools, but also as someone that helps others use the tools as well.
And in this aspect, I'm pretty sure that you are living probably the best time in history, because we never have these tools at our disposal before now. We had other type of tools that help us and we can leverage, but right now, like, creating and touching other people's lives with giving them access to these tools or teaching them how to use them or impacting them through the music that you produce. And like, for example, look at this podcast. I wasn't able to run this podcast by myself without the help of AI. Since I run a solo business, I have to run the business, serve my clients, and so on. But with the help of AI, I can produce this, I can master this, and putting out there in basically no time. Of course, it's not pro production. I'm not Joe Rogan or whatever, but still, I have similar mission with you to impact other people's lives.
You're missing a word. Yet.
Thank you so much. I actually have a small dream to do this full time professionally. Not sure how that will come to fruition, because even that I'm a nomad, I do want to travel for the rest of my life and probably doing in person podcasts like Joe Rogan is, probably flying people over. I don't know. I will see. But thank you so much for that. I will keep it going.
Well, we can have a conversation, about that. But because I support, several podcasters in being able to do what it is that you're aiming to do with the help of AI, but also other sets of tools to help create, that revenue and so forth, to be able to live the nomadic life, if you will. There are ways that you can create offers of value that will enable that. And if someone in your audience or is interested in that, there there are many ways that you can design your life that's in service of what it is that you care about. And if what you care about is helping other people, there are not just my programs. There are many programs that can support entrepreneurs in being able to create a life that they love.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, if what you do is not fulfilling, won't have an impact.
Yeah, don't do it. If it's not fulfilling, don't do it. Right? Because our most valuable asset, I would assert, is there are many valuable assets, but one of our most valuable assets is our attention. And if our attention is on something that is not fulfilling, then what we put our attention on grows. So the lack of fulfillment will continue to grow in your life and start spreading all over your life. Because if you're unhappy in your job and you're going home and you're carrying your unhappiness home, then what happens? You don't all of a sudden leave your unhappiness, right? It starts to spread. You're talking about it with your family or your kid, you're at the dinner table or whatever, and you're talking about the bad day that you have. And what are you doing? You're spreading your unhappiness with others. But imagine that you're doing something that you're excited about, that you're fulfilled in, that's generating the type of revenue that has you be inspired, that, oh wow, what I'm doing is helping so many people, and my revenue is growing as a result. And you bring that home, and your excitement about the people that you've been able to touch and impact, and the life that you're living, then that gets all over your family. That starts to spread into other areas of life too. So what you put your attention on, your time too, will actually grow and start to be a forest of possibilities in your life, whether that's, positively, or, that's not so helpful. So it's up to us as the designers of our life, right? And that's one of the kind of the first principles that I have as kind of a, I guess, the ethos of wealth and impact, is being responsible for all of it. I'm responsible for making a decision to stick with something that might be unfulfilling. Then it's my responsibility to find another path like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you arrive there? Like, if someone is listening, all right, Marcus, that sounds amazing. Of course, I would love to have a fulfilling life that I spread across my loved ones and so on. But how I identify if something that I am pursuing is actually fulfilling? Because in entrepreneurship world, like, we have roadblocks and we face challenges. When we know that is just a small bump in the road and not something that we shouldn't pursue.
It's an important question. If I were to think about the challenges that I had to overcome and the opportunities that those challenges were, for example, I was at one point $75,000 in debt, right, years ago. And I got a call from a family member. And in that call, they were asking me for money. They were having some situation happening where they were going to lose their business. And they had reached out to me. I'll never forget, I was in New Jersey in the studio apartment, and I got that call, and I didn't have the money to be able to send. In that moment, I had like maybe $500 in my account and $75,000 in debt. And I deeply loved and cared about this family member. And I could not do anything to come up. It was $8,000 that they needed. I didn't have $8,000 to be able to help them. When I hung up that phone, that was my line in the sand. I said, you know what? It's not just about me anymore. It's not just about my aspirations and, oh, you know what? I can do hand to mouth right now because it's just me. No, it's not just me. It's me and those around me. It's me and my friends. It's me and my family. It's me and the communities that I care about. And so I said, okay, just like I studied and put in time and found masters in music, I'm going to find masters and put in the time and study and get under the tutelage and get access people with specialized knowledge in how to build wealth. And so that line in the sand started my journey to being able to create wealth for myself and others now. And so the first thing is arriving at your this is it, the this is it moment. And then there's seeking wise counsel. Then there's seeking mentors that have experienced or have gone through and overcome the challenges that you faced and got on the other side. And I remember the day that I got on the other side and where I had cleared out all of my debt and I got this check for it's like $40,000 and I didn't know what to do with the I was always living in a place of debt and kind of like a scarcity conversation that now all of a sudden I had this abundance. I didn't know what to do with the money, but I knew that I could call some people and ask. And that's what I did. And that's when I became an investor. Before then, I had been investing in my specialized knowledge and acquiring specialized knowledge through training and personal development and taking courses and so forth. But I hadn't invested before. And so when I got on the other side of debt into abundance, right? Then I reached out to some millionaires that I knew at the time and said, "What would you do if you were in my situation?" Right? And they gave me some good advice and I read some books and all of that. And I was able to turn that seed into a forest. And there are many ways, depending upon your situation, that can happen. But it all starts with making a decision and then seeking specialized knowledge to whatever your aim is and being clear on what your aims. A lot of times people don't have clear articulated aims. They know what they don't want, but they don't know what they want. So I like to help people get clear on their aims and what their purpose actually is. And once you have that clarity, then all of a sudden the world starts to become in service of your aims. It's like magic. Once you start having a clear aim and it's clearly defined and articulated, magically the manifestations that happen, the coincidences that happen, right? That start to show up in your life because your aim is clear and then you start taking action towards it. That's the other piece. Okay? Once you made that line in the sand and you created an aim, then there's putting some actions towards the achievement of that aim in place. So I've created a bunch of structures for that. And if any listener is interested in that, they could go to wealthandimpactbootcamp.com. And, there's a program that has an environment that helps people become clear and gives the step by step on what is required in order to become financially independent, to become more visible, to launch movements, to do these things that we've been talking about in this conversation. And that program has been going on for over 5 years now. And people, some people have become financially independent. Some people have ended up on television. Some people have created movements. Some people have finally got their books done. Some people have created podcasts and all of that. And it's one of my most prized creations, I would say, because it's created out of my own experience.
And that's wonderful because when we take that experience that you have, the challenge that we overcome, and show others how to do it themselves, it's much more easier than inventing something from scratch. And that's the power of it. And I like that. So, for those listening, I'll put a link in the show notes as well. And one small addition to that clarity, since when we have that clarity, it's much more easier to say no to things that don't align with that purpose. And that's something people miss. They just say yes to everything. They see every single thing as an opportunity, but it's just a distraction in disguise.
Yeah. What I would say to that is all opportunities aren't good opportunities. And the more clarity that you have, the more discerning you can be. And the more you are in an environment that is in service and design and supportive of what it is that you are wanting to do in the world, then the easier it is to say no. And if I look at the things that I say no to, right? The things that I now in my life say no to would be something that would be everything for someone else. And so me saying no becomes everything for someone else that is going to say yes to that no opportunity. So it's not even that just about me saying no or you saying no. It's that when you say no, you open up the door for someone else's yes.
Exactly. That's the trick if you want. And speaking of learnings, I want to wrap up with one last question for you. What's the biggest lesson you learned from working with the global icons?
The biggest lesson is it's all about the team. Biggest lesson is that when you have a team that is in alignment, that is focused on a mission that's bigger than the individual people inside of that mission, then you can do enormous good in the world. You can empower your dreams and your visions for yourself and others in exponential ways. When you have a team that's in alignment and everyone is aimed at the same target and everyone is moving in that direction with the same intention and with the same consciousness, then magic happens. And it's not even magic at that point. It's not even manifestation at that point. It's not even an aim realized at that point. It's something bigger than that. It's meaning. Meaning matches message, matches a moment that can ripple throughout time. A moment. And some moments look like a hit song. Some moments look like a Grammy. Some moments look like a country being freed. Some moments look like a new direction for communities. Some moments look like AI. Some moments look like crypto. Some moments look like your life.
Beautifully said. And I'll even go as far as closing the episode with that, because that was so beautiful ending to our conversation. Marcus, you're amazing.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I enjoy these kinds of conversations. And much love and light to you, listener. And just make something incredible that helps a lot of people.